Hey guys, thank you for stopping by and welcome to another episode of Making Sense of Life with me, Mario. In my previous video, we spoke about humility and why it matters, and in today's video, I'm going to speak about something which could help us in becoming or take us to the next step in becoming the best version of ourselves. And while I know that this may sound a little cliche and probably you might have heard it, I guess nothing could be further from the truth, and that is consistency. In fact, if you have watched my previous video on humility, towards the end I did mention that the greatest competitor that we can ever compete with is ourselves. And as long as we are making progress each day, no matter how small that may be, it would not be possible without consistency. So with that being said, let's jump into the topic of today's video. To understand consistency, we need to understand how habits work. Habits are the brain's way of saving effort, and given an option, the brain will make any routine into a habit. To an extent, it is good because it saves a lot of time and it's beneficial. Imagine if each of us have to get up each day relearning basic things, whether that's brushing your teeth, making your breakfast, tying your shoelace, or starting the car. It's going to be a nightmare. At the same time, while it has its positives, the drawback is that the brain is neutral and it could make any negative routine into a habit as well, eventually leading to negative habits or addictions and so on and so forth. In fact, Daniel Kahneman in his book Thinking Fast and Slow speaks about the duality nature of the brain, where he talks about the conscious brain and the subconscious brain. I would like to think of the subconscious and the conscious brain as the house and the security guard, where the house stands for the unconscious brain and the conscious brain is for the security, or the security guard is for the conscious brain. Just as the security guard has the responsibility of guarding the house from thieves, vandals, and other fraudsters, so is the responsibility for the conscious brain, because the conscious brain is nothing but the human will, and depending upon what we expose ourselves to or what we choose to indulge in, all that goes into our subconscious brain. The good thing is that for every negative routine or any negative habit, there is always a solution for it, and that is possible through what is known as the habit loop. A habit loop consists of three things, which is the cue or the trigger, the routine, and the reward. Take any negative habit, for example, whether that's binge eating, procrastination, overspending. There is always a pattern that follows. Let's take, for example, binge eating. Binge eating normally happens when a person experiences boredom, and usually when they experience boredom, like eating is just a way of killing the time. So if you see, the cue over here is boredom, but the routine is finding something to snack on. What if I replace that with, maybe I'm feeling bored, if I can invest that time into something more productive, whether that's learning a new skill, interacting with a friend with a more productive discussion, or maybe going out for a walk. Or let's take, for example, if it's procrastination. Maybe I have a certain aversion for a particular task, but if I try to replace that with the fact that there is a certain goal to be achieved, what are the benefits that I can get? I think you're getting the point, because ultimately, when it comes to a habit change, it's important to keep the cue or the trigger and the reward the same. The main trick is to replace the old habit with the new habit, and until and unless if the old habit is replaced with a new habit, the change is not going to happen. At the same time, while the habit loop is important, what's even more important is a belief that kind of encapsulates the habit loop. That is really important, because without the belief that change is possible, even knowing the habit loop and knowing how to tweak it, it's not going to happen. Too often at times, I come across many people who, especially during the new year, when they have resolutions and they want to make a change, they start off with full gusto, but then eventually down the line, they come across obstacles and then they give up along the way. The fact of the matter is that change is possible, but you need to have the belief to make that change. In fact, there is a quote by this person, Lee Ann Kaskutas, who's a senior scientist at the Alcohol Research Group, and she has this quote which I think kind of fits in what I really want to say. Here's what she says. She says that at some point, people in Alcoholics Anonymous look around the room and think, if it worked for that guy, I guess it can work for me. There's something really powerful about groups and shared experiences. People might be skeptical about their ability to change if they are by themselves, but a group will convince them to suspend disbelief. A community creates belief. I think I it's well worded, and I can't say it any better, because ultimately whom we really associate with makes a lot of difference. And I think that's why, as Jim Rohn would say, like, we are the average of the 5 people that we associate with. uh, as long as we like learn to pick up a few things, like, from, or the good things from each and every person, that could really help us, take us a long way. Today even neuroscience has actually proven that the brain is always growing, always changing. Unlike in the past, it was always thought that the brain was static, and that what we have been created with at the time of infancy, that's all that there is. There is no change. In fact, as they say, neurons are fired together. Neurons. Yeah, I hope I'm getting the quotation right. Neurons are fired together, wired together. I hope I got that right. So here's the thing: it's like, based on the kind of experiences that you expose yourselves to, it kind of rewires your brain, and it's both ways, whether it's positive or negative. In fact, bad habits actually do not just completely disappear; they just fall into disuse because of the fact that you have been indulging into more productive ways of doing things. Now, sometimes it may happen that while indulging, while trying to practice or cultivate good habits, sometimes there may be a certain patch during your time where you may slack off a bit, maybe for a week, maybe for a few days, for a month, it could be whatever. But the important thing is not to give up, because each time you have indulged in that particular action, it has left some kind of mark in your brain. So it's like, even though you may have fallen down from the horse, you can still get back on the horse and keep riding. But once again, it's also important to keep in mind as to what we really expose ourselves to. That is why, as I previously spoke about the conscious and the subconscious brain, in that sense, each of us have a responsibility of what really goes into our brains, and what we really expose ourselves to. So what do we actually make of all this? Too often at times, we have a lot of goals, we have a lot of aspirations, and which is very important. I mean, without, life really wouldn't make sense if we didn't have anything to strive for. But at the same time, we forget that to achieve that, to reach that point, it consists of small steps along the way. And I like this analogy of the stone cutter, because the stone cutter was able to break the stone at the 101st blow, not because of the 101st blow, but because of the 100 blows that preceded it. In fact, Jerry Seinfeld, who's a famous comedian, this is what he says, and I find this also kind of puts this thing in perspective. Here's a quote. He says, "Just keep at it, and the chain will grow longer every day. You'll like seeing that chain, especially when you get a few weeks under your belt. Your only job next is to not break that chain." This, of course, he's talking in the context of writing new material, because especially as from a point of being a creative, sometimes you may be waiting for that spark of inspiration to just fall from heaven, but usually it doesn't happen that way. And in fact, for any kind of work, not just from a creative standpoint, but any kind of just being motivated to work. In fact, most procrastinators will think that people who are successful just have success at their fingertips, that they have everything charted out and everything nicely cleansed, and everything is spick and span. But the fact of the matter is that work follows, and then the inspiration actually comes. And it's not that people who are successful do not have obstacles. They do have, but they're just more persistent in it, and that's what really sets them or makes them the best from the rest. Does any of these things have to do with, can we relate this in the spiritual life? 100% yes, it does make a huge difference. In fact, in as much as the grace of God is important in each of our lives, and none of us can actually do anything from our own, because without the grace of God, there's nothing much we can do. But at the same time, while the grace of God is there, there is a certain responsibility that each of us has. And as a nice quote goes, that God gives every bird its food but doesn't throw it to its nest. I don't think that I could really put it any more clearer. In fact, there is this person by the name Plinio de Oliveira, who is he's the founder of the Brazilian Society for the Defense of Tradition, Family and Property. He gives us the three distinctions of the penitent, the lukewarm and the impenitent. Now basically this is to say that the penitent is someone who knows what is right and wrong, who's making the effort to be good and strive to live a holy life, but at the same time, like, he experiences time and again, his weaknesses, his struggles, he keeps falling down, but he's still putting the effort. The lukewarm, on the other hand, is someone who, for him, it doesn't really make a difference whether there's anything such as right or wrong, because for him it doesn't really matter. You do anything right, everybody is his own judge and moral law, and that's about it. The impertinent is the worst case of all, because they are the guys who are actually literally looking for opportunities to actually do something wrong and even to lead others people into doing wrong. Now I suppose each of us in our proper senses would not want to be under the category of a lukewarm or being in the impenitent, but the thing is not to give up. In fact, they say that, and I've read this somewhere also, that the discouragement is the greatest weapon of the evil one, and in as much as we, whatever small things that we do, however small, whether it's going for mass, going for confessions, praying the rosary, each thing may seem like small zeros, like having no significance at all. But when we least expect it, when God puts a 1 in front of the zeros, it changes the whole equation. And that's why I think putting in that effort, showing up every day, despite not feeling like maybe like not finding really any sense of purpose, like just showing up and giving up our best, that's what makes the difference. And as in the Bible it says, draw closer to God and He will draw closer to you. I think that kind of puts everything in perspective, because while the grace of God is there, we also have a responsibility to respond to that. So while my Protestant brethren would like to think about being saved by faith alone, as James chapter 2 says, faith without works is dead. And that's kind of it. So just to sum up what I've been saying so far, consistency begets mastery, and ultimately the whole is made up of its parts. Without the parts, we would not have the whole. I hope you have drawn some kind of lessons in, and maybe you could use some of this information in your own lives into making this or tweaking a few changes into helping you becoming the best version of yourselves. And do share let me know what your thoughts are, and maybe if there are some things I could have spoken about more, or like if there was anything I could have added. And do share your feedback. I would love to know. Thank you for watching, and take care. I'll see you soon. God bless.